In the heart of what promised to be a beautiful union, a secret festered, a betrayal so profound it would unravel a decade of love, leaving a young woman to question everything she thought she knew about family, trust, and the man she was about to marry. This isn't just a wedding day gone wrong. It's a chilling descent into the murky depths of a family's hidden past, culminating in a truth so shocking that it would force a bride to abandon her own ceremony. What dark secret could shatter a love story so completely, revealing a sinister connection between her fiancé and the very person who had always sought to diminish her? The summer air, heavy and sweet, draped over Sanctuary Creek, a historic vineyard estate where cobblestone paths wound through sun-drenched grapes. For Elara, this day was the culmination of a decade-long dream, a tapestry woven from shared high school lockers, whispered secrets in college dorms, and a love that had felt as unshakable as the mountains on the horizon. She and Liam, her fiancé, were to be married in a small, intimate ceremony, a celebration for their closest friends and the family that had chosen to be present. From the age of 16, Elara and Liam had been an almost mythical couple. They'd attended every school dance together, chosen the same university, and now at 21 were taking the plunge into marriage. It was a choice born of certainty, not haste. Their shared life was a haven, a quiet apartment near campus where they built a future on late-night study sessions and the unspoken understanding that comes from knowing someone for half your life. It felt like destiny, Elara often confided to her closest friends. Elara's world, however, had always been shadowed by a different kind of family. Her older brother, Marcus, and her twin sister, Serena, along with their mother, Eleanor, had long been a source of profound loneliness. Since birth, Elara had been cast as the unwanted twin, the reason her father had walked away. The narrative had been ingrained in her from a young age. She was the burden, the mistake. They excluded her from birthdays, family trips, and even simple dinners. The moment she graduated, she had moved away with Liam, a definitive break that felt less like an escape and more like a final act of self-preservation. For years, she had lived in a peaceful silence, a world without their animosity. Sometimes, silence is the only way to heal, she had once told Liam, a sad smile on her face. 3 weeks ago, that silence shattered. An uncharacteristically polite message appeared in her inbox from Marcus, who had apparently seen her engagement announcement on social media. The request was simple, yet laden with years of unspoken resentment. Why hadn't they been invited? Elara's first instinct was to ignore it. The thought of them tainting her perfect day with their decades of contempt made her stomach churn. She confided in Liam, her voice trembling with uncertainty. He was the gentle counterweight to her cautious nature. Maybe, he had said, his voice a balm, they've had a change of heart. People can change. Give them a chance. His sincerity chipped away at her resolution, and she reluctantly agreed, but not without conditions. She sent Marcus a text with 3 firm rules, a shield to protect her ceremony from their dysfunction. First, no one in the extended family was to be told. The wedding was to remain small and private. Second, there were to be no speeches at the reception. And third, absolutely no crazy stunts, a phrase meant to encompass the entire chaotic history of her family's behavior. This day, she declared to herself, was for her.
The morning of the wedding dawned with a promise of perfection. Sunlight spilled into the bridal suite, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. As Elara and her bridesmaids bustled about, the air hummed with nervous excitement. Hair was pinned, dresses were zipped, and the subtle scent of gardenias filled the room. The moment was suspended in time, a bubble of joy and anticipation. Then the door flew open, and her brother Marcus burst in, his face a mask of frantic panic. Her bridesmaids shrieked, clutching their half-zipped dresses, and the serene morning dissolved into chaos. "Something's happening," he stammered, out of breath. "Out by the reception tents. You need to come." Elara's heart pounded against her ribs. She was still in her silk robe, her hair half-styled. She hadn't spoken to her mother or sister in years, and she had no idea what they were capable of now. Too panicked to move herself, she turned to her maid of honor, Maya, who was already fully dressed in a flowing teal gown. "Go with him," Elara instructed, her voice a strained whisper. "Find out what's happening. Tell me everything." A few frantic minutes later, Maya returned, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief. She recounted the scene that had unfolded in the reception area like a breathless eyewitness to a car crash. "You won't believe it," Maya began, her voice a hushed scandal. Apparently, Serena had confronted Liam, her voice rising in a furious accusation. "You cheated on her, you know that, back in high school," she had screamed, the words cutting through the air. The argument had quickly spiraled out of control. When Serena lunged at Liam, their mother, Eleanor, had grabbed her arm, trying to hold her back. Then Liam's best man, Caleb, had intervened, attempting to grab Serena's shoulder, but she had shrugged him off with such force that the delicate zipper on the back of her purple dress had given way, tearing it completely open. Maya paused for dramatic effect, leaning in conspiratorially. And she wasn't wearing anything underneath, Elara. Nothing. Serena was now being rushed to the car by a mortified Marcus, using her hands to shield herself from the curious onlookers. Elara's mind reeled. Cheated? The accusation felt like a physical blow. She finished getting ready in a daze, her movements mechanical, the joy of the day replaced by a cold dread. The moment her dress was on, she went to find Liam. He was standing with his groomsmen, his face pale and drawn, clearly in the middle of a tense conversation. When she asked him what happened, he became evasive, his usual open and honest nature replaced by a wall of deflection. He simply said, "It was a misunderstanding, Elara, just a misunderstanding." His refusal to look her in the eye, to offer a clear explanation, felt like a betrayal. The beautiful narrative of their love, which had always felt so real, suddenly felt fragile, a house of cards ready to collapse. She excused herself, muttering something about needing air, and walked away from the clamor of the reception area, retreating to a quiet, secluded garden alcove. Tears of frustration stung her eyes. The accusation wasn't what hurt the most, it was the silence. Liam's unwillingness to tell her the truth. The story felt hollow, the perfect fairy tale, a lie. In a moment of desperate clarity, she decided to get the truth from the source. She pulled out her phone and called Serena, the last person on earth she ever expected to confide in. "Just tell me," she said, her voice shaking, barely a whisper. "Was it true? Did he cheat on me with you?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, followed by a sigh. "No, Elara, it wasn't me." Serena's voice was surprisingly calm, devoid of her usual bitterness. "He had a small thing, a fling, towards the end of senior year. It wasn't with me." A wave of relief washed over Elara, only to be replaced by a deeper, more chilling fear. "Who then?" "It was with Mom," Serena said, the words hanging in the air like poison, each syllable a hammer blow. "Eleanor, when he was just 18, she was 43. The air left Elara's lungs in a rush. The world went silent, the joyous sounds of the wedding fading into a dull roar. The grotesque image of it all, her young, naive boyfriend and her mother, a woman who had spent a lifetime resenting her, sent a cold shiver down her spine. Serena confirmed that their mother had only told her, keeping it a secret from Marcus, which explained why he had been so willing to help arrange their attendance at the wedding. Everything came into sharp, painful focus. The animosity from her family, the odd looks her mother would sometimes give Liam, the way he would suddenly get quiet whenever Eleanor was mentioned. It all made sense. The betrayal was so much deeper than she could have ever imagined. It wasn't a childish high school indiscretion. It was a secret, a dark and insidious lie that had been festering for years, right under her nose. She was so consumed by the shock and anger that she couldn't move. She couldn't face Liam, who was likely looking for her, or her mother, who was still at the venue, a testament to her audacity. Instead of confronting them, she made a choice that was both impulsive and deeply logical. She turned and walked away. She left the garden, the estate, and the wedding she had spent a lifetime planning. She drove back to their apartment in a fog, her mind replaying the conversation over and over again. She packed a single bag, her movements slow and deliberate, and left. The apartment she and Leon had built into a home now felt like a mausoleum of a love that had never truly existed. In the weeks that followed, Elara lived out of a series of anonymous motels, the sterile rooms a stark contrast to the life she had once known. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with calls from her mother, but she only answered once. Eleanor's voice was filled with a familiar lack of empathy. "You're being inconsiderate,
Consider it, Elara, she had said, her tone dismissive. This is a silly thing to dwell on. It's in the past. The audacity of her words was staggering. Soon, her family's anger spilled from phone calls to social media, a relentless barrage of messages from Marcus and her mother. Elara felt the weight of their disapproval, but for the first time in her life, she felt no guilt. The years of emotional abuse, the narrative of being an unwanted mistake, suddenly felt like a lie she no longer had to believe. She was not a mistake. She was a person who had been profoundly wronged. She needed to escape, to find a clean slate. A message from Liam's best man, Caleb, arrived late at night. "You're overreacting, Elara," the text read, a tone of casual dismissal. "He still loves you. This past stuff doesn't matter." The words were well-intentioned, but they felt like a final blow. They underscored the fact that no one understood the depth of the betrayal. This wasn't just about a past mistake. It was about the foundation of their entire relationship being built on a lie. After a few days of silent reflection, Elara finally reached a conclusion. The comments on her social media had planted an uncomfortable seed in her mind. Was this grooming? She had to know. The idea of speaking to Liam again was agonizing, but the need for closure was greater. She also realized she couldn't do this alone. She reached out to her old friends from university, a tight-knit group of 3 women she adored. They were an inseparable trio, and she had kept in touch with them over the years. To her relief, they immediately offered her a place to stay in their apartment, 3 states away. It was a lifeline, a new beginning. She made the decision to move, to start over. But first, she needed to talk to Liam. The meeting was arranged for a quiet cafe on a rainy Saturday. When Elara saw Liam, she barely recognized him. He was disheveled, unshaven, and his clothes were stained and wrinkled. He looked like a ghost of the man she was supposed to marry. "I had to move back in with my parents," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "With your income gone, I couldn't afford the apartment." The self-pity in his voice was jarring. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. She needed answers, not pity. "I need to know everything, Liam. The truth," he finally confessed, the words tumbling out in a broken stream. The affair had started when he was 17, a teenager just beginning to navigate the world. He said he had initially thought the interactions with her mother were innocent, a friendship, but that Eleanor had become increasingly touchy. He insisted they had never had a physical relationship beyond that, a small mercy that still felt like a hollow victory. When Elara pressed him on why he had invited her family, he claimed she had worded it strangely, leading him to believe only her brother and sister were coming. It was a flimsy excuse, a last-ditch attempt to shift the blame, and Elara saw right through it. Then the pleas began. His voice was desperate, his eyes filled with tears. He begged for forgiveness, for a second chance. He talked about their love, their history, the life they were supposed to have. But as he spoke, Elara was no longer listening. She was looking at him, truly seeing him for the first time. The boy she had loved, the man she was going to marry, had a fundamental, unforgivable secret. His desperation was not about their love, but about his fear of the consequences. She got up from the table, not for a moment to run and hide, but to walk away for good. She had her answers. She had her closure. 3 days later, she was on the road, heading toward a new state, a new life, and a new understanding of what it meant to be truly free. Her phone was off, her social media accounts deactivated, and her heart felt both broken and, for the first time, truly her own. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she was driving it for herself, no longer haunted by the ghost of a past she was finally putting behind her.